Payroll is the core of any economy. And if there is some sort of interruption in that, whether it's a few days to a few weeks, the ripple effect, I would say, is closer to a tsunami effect. There is quite a few implications and that we will see over the course of the next few months and years just from the CrowdStrike outage.
Here's a pre-show scenario for you. Imagine you had to visit 6 houses just to cook your dinner. One place has the pots and pans, one has the stove, another has the food. You get the idea. Sounds ridiculous, right? Well, the reality is most global businesses operate the same way, using 6 different tools just to pay their global workforce. But now there's one platform offering truly simple, truly global payroll, and that's today's sponsor. That's Deal. That's DEEL. With in-house customer success managers, local payroll experts, dedicated points of contact, and more, Deal eliminates third-party handovers and provides unmatched compliance and flexibility. In fact, they'll even help you track and flag the latest changes in payroll regulations before they even become an issue. So are you ready to transform your global payroll system? If you are, click the link in the show notes below to book a demo with Deal today. That's DEEL. Hello and welcome back to the Payroll Podcast. My name is Nick Day. I'm CEO at JJ Recruitment Group, and we are specialist payroll recruiters operating in the UK, Europe, and now the US as well. Of course, if you're a regular listener to this show, please do remember to subscribe to it. Please do review the show. But most importantly, please do share this with all of your colleagues and friends so that together we can really help raise the profile of payroll worldwide. Now, today is going to be quite an interesting topic because we're going to be tackling the critical issues of payroll security and resilience. And I think it's especially pertinent considering the recent cybersecurity challenges that many companies would have faced following the notable CrowdStrike and Microsoft outage that impacted many businesses as recently as the 19th of July. Hence, today I've invited Alex Khusid from Payroll Resolutions, who's a seasoned expert in payroll security and risk management, to join us on today's show because he has over 15 years dedicated experience in fortifying payroll systems, supporting organizations to make sure that they can really make sure they are safe in today's current world, which is being disrupted. It's being disrupted by lots of people trying to break into systems, by lots of people trying to do many nefarious things. And we want to make sure that in payroll, we can rely on the security of our systems, rely on the security of our data, and really make sure we're able to deliver a compliant payroll process without the risk of modern cyber threats, which also include spear phishing and email spoofing. And I highlight those because it's something that most of us would have experienced before. However, today's conversation is going to go beyond the basics. It's going to be a proactive call to all of you to protect against economic impacts that could cripple businesses and affect countless employees. Alex is going to bring a wealth of his knowledge in global payroll administration, risk management, and compliance across multiple regions, including the UK and the US, as well as Canada and India. He's led teams through mergers and acquisitions. He's set up stringent payroll processes, and he's pioneered payroll innovations. But today he's going to be sharing his critical insights on safeguarding organizations' financial and data integrity against the backdrop of what are evolving cyber threats. So as you can imagine, lots to get into today. So Alex, welcome to the Payroll Podcast. How are you feeling today?
Thank you very much. Feeling great. That was an amazing introduction. I really appreciate it. Happy to be here and happy to help the industry. There's a lot going on. As you mentioned, the CrowdStrike and the Microsoft outages really opened the eyes of a lot of industry leaders. And there's going to be potentially a lot to look back at. There's really no secret ingredient to cybersecurity. I'd like to say. Craig Berland, who's CISO in version 6, he wrote in an article that there's no secret ingredient, just good cybersecurity. And he writes that robust cybersecurity is rooted in basic, consistent practices rather than elusive or expensive new techniques. He drew inspiration from Kung Fu Panda. I don't know if you saw that movie, where Po says there's no secret ingredient. It's just you. This philosophy translates into cybersecurity as a call to adhere to fundamental principles. He emphasizes the critical importance of patching vulnerabilities And going back to the CrowdStrike outage, where a patch was released and perhaps took out 20% of enterprises in the United States, and a lot of downstream effects are going to be seen from this impact. Malicious actors, more often than not, exploit outdated systems, and considering that in 2023 to 2024, we've seen a 73% increase in the number of ransomware attacks, and payments from these attacks have nearly doubled. Malicious actors are using double, triple extortion tactics. And ransomware as a service, I don't know if you've heard of that. It's a booming industry, and it's attracting more and more players and impacting more and more industries. And with payroll, in my opinion, payroll is the core of any economy. And if there is some sort of interruption in that, whether it's a few days to a few weeks, the ripple effect, I would say, is closer to a tsunami effect. There is quite a few implications, and that we will see over the course of the next few months and years just from the CrowdStrike outage.
For sure. I mean, I think the stats that I read on CrowdStrike, and obviously had a serious impact on Microsoft Windows systems. It impacted 8.5 million devices worldwide. We saw flights delayed. We saw flights cancelled, banking systems and car payments failing, emergency services unable to function properly. And funnily enough, these are the kind of things that would also be really, difficult to run without a payroll operation paying their employees on time, right? And we know that many payroll teams will now be facing a backlog of processes and workload to deal with as a result of the CrowdStrike issue, right? So it's really important that, although that was a bug in the system, that we keep payroll teams vigilant, that we're able to make sure they can identify a phishing scam, particularly even in the emergence of this outage, right? Because I don't know about you, Alex, but I've been getting a few emails coming into me saying, hey, did you have a backlog? Click on this link. We can help you through the backlog. And these are phishing scams. People take advantage of every single possible situation they can to try and find a way in. So let's start with the basics for the payroll professionals listening to this. What are the kind of things they need to be vigilant for? What are the things we need to start looking out for to make sure that we can protect our payroll departments a little bit better?
Well, I'll go back to payroll resolutions, and out of the last 12 consultations, we've had 11 of those have been fraudulent. And looking at those emails, some of them were more sophisticated than others. Sometimes it'd be easier to tell that one company, based just on the language that's being used, that is a fraudulent attack. These are malicious actors who are able to get a hold of a business's bank account and are trying to use payroll to cash out and to essentially exfiltrate the money out of the business bank account. The language that's used in those emails, pretty easy to spot, but some of them are a lot more sophisticated. There was an incident where we had an email going back and forth with the CFO of a company, or we believed was the CFO of the company. Someone was able to get the email address and get a hold of that. And so the headers and everything through the email seemed legitimate. And 4 or 5 emails through, the CFO sent an attachment. This attachment was an MSG file, which is an archive of emails. And something in my gut told me that maybe something might not be right here. And I did some research, and I found an example in 2015 where someone was able to embed a banking Trojan into an MSG file. Now, this is not a PDF. I'm sure many of you have heard of, PDFs containing malware, PNG files, but this was an archive of emails. And the person who had gotten access to the CFO's email address said that they had some concerns and wanted a second opinion, and sent over this attachment. So after looking through and finding this example, I was able to change the extension from .msg to .zip, open it in an application called 7-zip, and drilling in to perhaps 100 different files, I landed upon a PDF which was right next to a JavaScript banking Trojan. So this person, had perfect English. They were using the email that belonged to the CFO. The headers were appropriate, but they were looking to get not just only our banking information and personally identifying information, but those of our clients as well.
It's a good example, and that's an example of something to give people a term they can reference if they're thinking about all the different things they've got to protect themselves against, of a malicious actor targeting a payroll company, potentially, or a company in this instance. And you've said that you've seen a real growing threat of malicious actors coming into the space now, targeting payroll companies specifically. And I wondered if with that in mind, what are the kind of effective strategies that we need to have in place to make sure that we are able to identify these, or make sure we don't open the wrong thing? Because as you say, some of these will have perfect English, perfectly formed emails, they may have followed it. It gets quite difficult, right? So what do we need to do? How can we prepare ourselves for such a complex type of attack?
Absolutely, and this is a type of attack that's going to be increasing parabolically. In the past, industries that were affected by this were, education, research, government, military, healthcare. Um, but regions right now being impacted, North America as well as Europe, have accounted for 58% of publicly extorted ransomware attack victims. And what can be done? There are a lot of things that can be done. There are third-party applications that will stop these um, emails from coming in. But a lot of times they will use methods that could essentially bypass the defenses. Um, and so one thing to keep in mind is that um, any particular file can have a malicious virus, Trojan, for example. It could be spying on the servers, it could be collecting information, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an executable file or a PDF, as we know. They can take the form of a PNG file, even a TXT file. Would you believe it that a TXT file can have the ability to launch another executable with and gain administrative privileges and essentially have access to everything that an HRIS and payroll system has. That includes, names, addresses, social security numbers, direct deposit information. They can make changes. They can add employees. They can remove employees. The term ghost employee is really changing over the last year or two. The term ghost employee has now, become something that we need to be very vigilant against. And there's some added practices for prevention and mitigation. So one of the ways that we can do so is through user access control. We want to be able to essentially uh, provide employees with access to information on a need-to-know basis. It's not necessary to have access to be able to add an employee, run payroll, change direct deposit information, all by the same individual, by the same employee. And these employees, they can come from within the organization or they can come from outside. We've seen an increase, coming of ransomware attacks coming from Africa about 58% year over year from 2023 to 2022. And looking now at 2024, I think the trend is going higher and higher. Now, one of the issues here is that there's a lot of workers who are living paycheck to paycheck. Um, in 2023, 53% of households who earned 100,000 US dollars per year were living paycheck to paycheck. 38% roughly of households making a quarter million US dollars per year were living paycheck to paycheck. And if we think about that, how many of those households and families are perhaps one payment away from a repossession or a foreclosure or a charge off on a credit card? And when we think about that, we also want to think about the businesses that these families and these households spend at. These businesses don't necessarily have the cash reserves or the inflow to sustain perhaps even a week without revenue. So imagine what would happen if just 10% of the workforce did not receive their pay on time. Here in the US, there is a number of models where allowing employees to get access to their paycheck early. However, individuals, employees, workers, contractors, vendors, they all rely on getting their pay on time. And when it doesn't come in on time, a disaster can happen. And the disaster can take the form of a national security threat. It is really that serious.
So essentially, what you're saying in terms of the payroll data side is it's worth compartmentalizing access roles within payroll systems. That obviously will help mitigate some of the risks attached, which I think makes perfect sense. I thought what was quite interesting from the CrowdStrike information as well was obviously it was that anyone that was using MS products were potentially impacted, but those working on Apple or even Linux server security, they weren't necessarily impacted in the same way, right? So I wondered if on the back of that, there are any lessons that can be learned from the evolution of systems like Linux for server security, or if there's anything else that payroll people can start, maybe, if I'm working in payroll now and I want to go and arrange a meeting with my IT director about ensuring the security of my payroll data, what are the kind of things I need to be finding out? What kind of servers do I want to be having access to? What kind of systems, what kind of questions even should I be asking of my IT director? Hello, global payroll leaders. Are you facing challenges in finding the right payroll talent for your team? If you are, I hear you, and I'm here to offer you a solution. Because at JGA Payroll Recruitment, we're experts at sourcing, attracting, and engaging with top-tier global payroll talent that really drives business success. So don't let the frustration of finding great payroll professionals hold you back from raising the profile of payroll in your organization. The cost of a poor hire isn't just financial. It costs you time, or worse, it damages the reputation of your payroll operation. That's why we're 100% dedicated to ensuring your recruitment journey with us is nothing short of exceptional. Partner with us at JGA because we're an award-winning global payroll recruitment agency with a proven track record of success. We have over 100 five-star Google reviews, and we're trusted by many of the world's leading brands. And we would just love to help you elevate your team with the best payroll talent available anywhere in the world. Reach out to us today at 01727 800 or 377 or visit us at jjrecruitment.com. And while you're at it, why not sign up to our weekly payroll newsletter for exclusive industry insights and job opportunities? With us, your perfect payroll opportunity or your perfect payroll hire awaits.
Well, certainly don't do what Southwest has supposedly was accused of doing, which is running Windows 3.1. That was not true, but they were running Windows, in fact, and so there are many different types of malicious applications, and they can be embedded and they can be run on Windows. They can be run on Linux. They can be run on Mac OS. There really isn't one secret key to or secret ingredient to really getting this done, but where it really comes down to is the frontline defense, and that's employees and employee training and understanding what makes sense, and really that gut feeling that I had when that email came in from that CFO is something that really we should really consider, because the workers in the payroll field are working day to day, and when they see something out of the ordinary, um, like they say in New York City, if you see something, say something. It's critically important because without doing so, it's potential that the malicious software will spread, and a business can easily shut down. I had a client of mine. He was running a furniture company, and they had a ransomware attack. It was done through a phishing email, and it shut down their servers, and they demanded about $500,000 to unencrypt their files. Well, the business owner decided not to negotiate with terrorists, as they called it. And what ended up happening is the workers did not get paid. They did not get paid for 2 weeks. And they ended up taking the vans that they were delivering the furniture, along with the furniture that was inside, and stealing it and perhaps selling it, because there's these individuals really rely on their income, and when the paychecks do not come in on time, the repercussions can take out a business. One thing to think about is with CrowdStrike, going back to that, and Microsoft, is that there are taxes that are due, and taxes over $100,000 have to be paid the very next business day. If they're not paid the very next business day, the business is subject to an automatic 10% penalty. And so, if we look at enterprise-sized companies who maybe may have a $10 million tax payment or $1 million tax payment, for example, depending on where in the year it is, that's a significant chunk of change. And besides that, there's damage control that needs to be implemented. Time is of the essence when it comes to payroll, and cybersecurity is never before have we seen anything like this. And cybersecurity has to be taken seriously, both from a proactive standpoint and from a damage control standpoint.
This is a very real thing. I mean, we're going to give some more information in a minute about solutions, but when I looked at the data breach statistics for 2024, there were over 35 million known records breached. The monthly average, I think, was almost 9 million. And in terms of publicly disclosed incidents, it's still over 10,000 publicly disclosed incidents in 2024 already. So, these are big incidents that are being disclosed, big companies being hit as well as the small companies, right? But when we talked offline prior to today's show, Alex, you talked about some innovative backup solutions. And one of those was talking about blockchain technology. And that's actually a subject which is kind of gone away a little bit in the world of payroll. A lot of companies, initially solution providers, were looking at blockchain as being a potential technology that they could utilize to deliver better payroll systems and solutions. But actually, you found that using blockchain technology, it can be found used a different way. You can leverage it to create what you call air-gapped backup systems for payroll data. I wonder if you could just tell us a bit more about that and what the advantages are of such an air-backed approach using that kind of tech.
Absolutely. So with blockchain, normally you would have public nodes which would verify transactions on a distributed ledger. But if we were to limit these nodes to private and vetted industries, then we can essentially attach a variable to each part of an HRIS or a payroll system, and we can create air gap backup. And what air gap means is essentially it does not have a connection to the original system, and we can use what's called a checksum. A checksum essentially is um, a string of letters and numbers which confirms that the system that is offline matches the system that is currently, under attack. If we think about some of these issues today, the recent statistic is about 1,636 on average attempted attacks per organization in the United States per day. That is absolutely mind-boggling. And then recently we've seen Ukraine and the war with Russia. They have taken out their banks and they have taken out their telecommunication systems. The online services for financial institutions across the entire country were producing errors and unstable. And it's impacted other services, including social networks, the national card payment system, and even the mirror payment system in Russia, which was implemented following the sanctions against Russia. And its use has increased after Visa and MasterCard both withdrew from the country. The trends are going parabolic, like I mentioned earlier. A recent report from Checkpoint Research has provided some recent relevant data on cyber attacks. If we look at Q2 24, attacks were driven by factors such as increased digital transformation and reliance on the use of AI and machine learning. Now, AI and machine learning is great for the defensive side, but the malicious actors are also using the same systems to be able to find vulnerabilities in not just payroll service providers, but in payroll departments within businesses, small and large. Industries that have been affected, have been succumbing to. Actually, I want to correct myself. 1,636 average attacks per organization per week. And that's a 30% increase from last year. And regions is another thing. Yeah, I'm sorry, Nick, go ahead.
So just given that human error, we've mentioned this earlier with the CFO attack earlier on that you mentioned on the CFO's email, given that human error often represents the weakest link in security, right? And as much as you might have good systems, if we make errors, we are human. What are the kind of training strategies you'd recommend to enhance security awareness, particularly for the payroll professionals that listen to this kind of show? So if they are handling payroll data, they can just be a little bit more secure in the way they handle that data and try and minimize and mitigate those risks attached with human error.
No, great question. Besides user access control, there is a lot of opportunity in learning and development, and with employees and workers with different learning styles, I think there is an opportunity to really gauge where the opportunities are and be able to create new knowledge bases that will help people learn in ways that they may not have understood in years past. Cybersecurity, technical writing has been, notoriously, very difficult, to comprehend, and with a lot of jargon in it. So there's a lot of ways that we can approach it, but the vigilance, something that you mentioned at the very beginning, is really important, and vigilance comes in all shapes and forms, but it is the first, the first line of defense against bad actors. And these bad actors are not just coming from, Eastern Europe, as we've seen in the past. They've been coming from all over the world. I didn't, and in fact, there's been a lot of incidents where the attacks have happened from within the organization itself.
Something I wanted to bring up as well today is a lot of systems now moving towards sort of more API based systems, and obvious reasons for doing that. A lot of companies now using software and they're communicating over APIs. But obviously, with any kind of new technology, often new risks are introduced. I wonder if there's anything that's been introduced in relation to APIs and how companies can protect themselves against those vulnerabilities. I did read about the Movelt attack, and perhaps you could bring that to the fore for the listeners who may also be familiar, in case they're not. But also, a lot of companies now are working with APIs. Is there anything they need to do to help ensure that they are fully, as secure as they can be?
No, great question. So with APIs that allow different systems to work together, and gain efficiencies of scale, they also open up a lot of risks. And there are some ways to manage that risk. There's anti-ransomware tools which are now being embedded in BIOS or the UEFI, which can help detect, block, and restore systems from a ransomware attack. The ransomware normally occurs at the operating system level, whereas the BIOS launches before the operating system does. So, with vulnerability management, conducting regular assessments and network segmentation, isolating critical systems to limit the spread of attacks and protect sensitive information is going to be key. Regular backups, going back to the air gap backups that we talked about earlier, is another very important point. And then incident response planning, ensuring that there's regular backups, because payroll, as we know, is very much a chronological, is very relies on chronological calculations. And so, if there is an error that needs to be corrected, the downstream effects can last for months, if not years, with penalties and interest. And in the event of the CrowdStrike attack, it was a Friday, which is the due date for a semi-weekly depositor, and we're yet to see what the outcome is going to be there, and whether the IRS or the HRMC is going to honor this as a legitimate issue, and perhaps waive penalties and interest in these regards.
I mean, we do get a lot of, if I'm listening to this, they may go, actually, I'm okay. I'm protected. We've got the SOC 2 certification in the US or in the UK. We've got Cyber Essentials or Cyber Essentials Plus, or we've got the ISO 27001 sort of certifications. I'm just interested to know, I'm not an expert, and we are, in my business, we have Cyber Essentials, right? So we've gone through that process. But I'd love to know just how much security that does give us. Should we, can we relax a little bit more if our organization has been through one of these standardized sort of cybersecurity compliant type programs? Do they make a big difference? Is it something you'd recommend? I'm just intrigued to know, because there might be people going, well, actually, we've got SOC 2. I don't think this is relevant to me. But I would argue that with human error being usually the weakest link, which we've discussed, actually, it's still really relevant. But these things are still very helpful at the same time.
Well, I want to point out that human error is goes both ways. So one thing I want to mention is that with beyond user access control and SOC 2 compliance, and there's other ways that payroll providers and payroll departments can protect themselves. Honeypots or honeypot computer systems. These are fake systems, often run on virtual machines or otherwise sandboxed from the rest of the environment, which might be attractive to an attacker, but wouldn't otherwise be known to regular employees. And when an attacker penetrates a honeypot system, then their behavior can be studied. Another thing that can be done are what's called canary tokens. These are fake tokens that can be used to track user activity online. Perhaps this malicious attacker who has penetrated this honeypot system, which does not have real information, and follow along to see what they are doing, what websites they're visiting, what images they're viewing. Are they accessing the dark web or perhaps even clear web resources? Fake tokens and keys can be dropped onto enterprise computers, especially with a lot of employees working from home. And these canaries, if you know what I'm referring to, are similar to the coal mines of the Industrial Revolution, where canaries were much more subject to toxic gases like carbon monoxide, and so
Canary dies, get out.
yeah, exactly. Put on the helmets and get out as fast as you can. And there's also canary files. These are fake documents that are placed among real documents to help detect unauthorized access, copying of those files, modification, or even exfiltration. Then there's canary commands, tracking certain commands that a software engineer wouldn't normally run. A Unix command, for example, who am I? Is far more likely to be used by a malicious actor than an engineer, because an engineer is going to know who they are logged in as.
It goes quite James Bond-esque, doesn't it? It's almost like something out of a movie, and in payroll we're living this movie, as you said, 1637 or whatever that might be. The average number of attacks an organization will suffer in a week. Wow, we need to make sure that we are vigilant and we have the right processes in place. There's a couple of things I think to mention in terms of advice. I'm sure you can expand on this because in your experience it's something you've come across. Number one is in terms of your mitigation strategies as a payroll professional, is making sure hopefully you've got access to emergency funds so that if something does happen, you're still able to pay your employees in some way or other. So we don't have some of the instance you mentioned earlier. But I also think it's an opportunity for people to think about their disaster recovery plans, right? Because a lot of people assume it happens to everyone else. It doesn't happen to me until it's too late. And as we saw with CrowdStrike, as we saw with the pandemic, sometimes we can't always plan and things can catch us when we're not quite ready for it. So it's making sure that people have the right kind of recovery and disaster recovery programs in place. One of those being access to emergency funds. So what in your
And exercises.
So what in your opinion, Alex, would be like the 5 key, I don't know, recovery strategies that you'd recommend a payroll person deployed within their organization?
No, I would say first and foremost would be user access controls. That would be the number one. I would say making sure that there's compartmentalization so that employees who are in HR or in payroll can access the information that they need, but they do so on a need to know basis. And there is logging that happens along with that. So there is there's a lot of ways in. And so there's another way to help protect organizations, and that's through browsers. Um, I want to give a quick example of a mobile ad campaign. It was called Confetti, and they conducted an advertising campaign that peaked at 10 billion bid requests per day before they were disrupted. And it was actually disrupted by accident and involved an advertising SDK called Caramel Ads. And they released applications on the Google Play Store. But these applications also had an evil twin, and that was their evasion method. The threat actors maintained non-malicious decoy applications in the Play Store, all of which used the Caramel Ads SDK, which was not malicious by itself. But they developed over 250 apps and gave the illusion that they came from different developers. The method used through this twin app system to create ads using the publisher account on the Google Play Store, and that allowed them to modify the traffic. So when when that ad was clicked, it would appear as though it originated from a different device. But then what it did is it could open any URL of their choice using any device browser, and you can even download an application and, in fact, run that application if given privileges. So it's very important that patches are patches not just to operating systems, but patches to um, browsers, anything embedded in Windows, anything embedded into Mac, that those are done as quickly as possible. As we saw with CrowdStrike, within hours of that of that system, that patch taking Windows out, there were malicious actors trying to break into these systems. With CrowdStrike, I think they serve approximately 20% of US based enterprises. And to this day, there's still emails coming in that reference CrowdStrike and various solutions. So it's very important to take a look at those and make sure that you're not opening attachments, that you're not opening not just PDFs, but image files, TXT files. One of my clients a number of years ago had acquired about 16 private companies, and these companies had different domain names. The original company that bought these out, they did not necessarily consolidate all the domain names. And as you know, in Outlook, the default messaging says this email came from outside of your organization. Please, please make sure that you know who the person is that's emailing you, and use caution opening attachments. Well, with 16 companies sending timesheets, sending batch files that need to be uploaded, the final straw was uh, the administrator who had to do the audit had to choose between paying employees who were earning minimum wage and getting it paid on time, or submitting the file as is. And what happened in this case, the file was submitted as is, and unfortunately, when that file was opened, that allowed ransomware to infiltrate their system, and unfortunately, that cost the company $2 million. And there's no guarantee there that that even if you pay the ransom, that information is still not going to be breached or essentially sold on the dark web. Right now, we're seeing numbers in the millions for information of employees, names, addresses, social security numbers, direct deposit information, things like that. A 5,000 employee company had an auction. All the information was auctioned, and the winning bid was in the millions of dollars. That's how valuable this information is to these malicious actors, and it can't be understated that the front line of defense has to be the employees. There needs to be training. There needs to be penetration testing and exercises like red team, blue team type of exercises. And this goes for businesses small and large. Just recently, Payroll Resolutions was hit with I would say DDoS, a distributed denial of service attack, and every 5 minutes or so, there was an email coming in. Our systems blocked after 4 attempts. It blocked the IP address, but then a few minutes later, another one came in. And just 2 days ago, uh, I received an email from admin@payrollresolutions.com. That email said, or encouraged me rather, to open up a file that was in Microsoft 365. I looked at the headers, and interestingly enough, the headers of the email matched, and this was not necessarily a spoof. This was someone who was able to get access to our systems. So as soon as we noticed this, we immediately shut it down. We implemented multi-factor authentication. And going back to what you were saying earlier, SMS, MFA, or two-factor authentication is not very secure. SIM swaps, I'm sure many of you have heard of that, will allow somebody to get a code that will be sent, normally to the employee, but will be sent to the malicious actor instead. There are hardware tokens. YubiKey is one, as an example, that is not connected to the computer, however, and not connected to the internet, and it allows an employee to log in to perhaps a VPN using a code generated by this hardware token. And I would say that that's the evolution and the direction that the industry is going to be headed.
It's frightening, but hopefully, if we can just protect one person today, one other client that ultimately might be responsible for, as you say, a 5,000 employee payroll or bigger, then we've done our job on the payroll podcast. We've protected one more person. We know that one of our listeners statistically is going to get hit with an attack the day they listen to this, right? Whether they get through, whether they penetrate or not, we just don't know. What we do, I think the CrowdStrike and this, hopefully this episode is underlined, is that we need to have a solid strategy, a recovery strategy in place if we're working in payroll. That way, whatever happens, payroll can run with minimal disruption. And with data and documentation secured, we can also reduce the risk of non-compliance, of severe disruption, and most importantly, of employees not getting paid and the dissatisfaction and issues that come with that as well. I think it was Mike Tyson that said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Well, we don't want to be in that situation, right? We want to protect ourselves as best we can. So Alex Khusid from Payroll Resolutions, thank you so much for joining me today, giving us a bit of an insight into the scary world of cybersecurity and the threats that are out there. But let's hope we protected one more payroll listener today from a potential attack. And let's work together as a community to make sure we continue to safeguard each other with best practice, solid security protocols, and we'll keep raising the profile of payroll, one payroll at a time worldwide. So, Alex, thank you ever so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Nick. Take care.
This episode is sponsored by Deal. That's DEEL. Deal is your forever people platform built to simplify your entire global payroll process. Deal's fully managed global payroll makes it possible to pay your entire team in over 100 countries and in over 200 currencies, all in one place. So whether you're an enterprise business, a small company, or something in between, Deal is built to meet your unique business needs. So if you're ready to transform your global payroll system, click the link in the show notes to book a demo with Deal today. That's DEEL.